Rachel Billups, a reverend in the United Methodist Church, writes this Advent study that we've been using for the prior 2 weeks and this week and next week, called An Unlikely Advent. There's videos that we've been discussing after worship during our Bible study. The book club on Wednesdays has been going over this study as well. And again, it's called An Unlikely Advent, Extraordinary People of the Christmas Story. So the last 2 weeks, we first started with, on the first week of Advent, with Zechariah and Elizabeth. And then last week, we engaged in a story about Herod, the villain. This week, our focus is on the Magi, a curious people. And you can see our nativity is starting to expand. Our wise men, our Magi, have come to join our nativity scene this week. And Reverend Billups writes, most every nativity scene includes wise men or Magi, usually 3 of them. This week we have 2 in our nativity. Well, look, they are 2 together. Thank you. 2 together and 1. Yes. Matthew tells us that the Magi came from the east and brought gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Anything more than that is speculation. The Magi are important for a couple of reasons. For one, they began the tradition of giving gifts at Christmas. And their gifts tell us something about Jesus. Gold is a gift fit for a king. Frankincense, when burned, rises to the heavens and signifies Jesus' divinity. Myrrh, which can be used to prepare bodies for burial, reminds us that Jesus is also fully human and died a human death. As much as everyone loves to give and receive presents, the Magi serve a more important function. They are outsiders. They are not Jewish, and they do not understand Jewish ideas about a Messiah. They don't understand the significance of Jesus being born in Bethlehem, the hometown of King David. But they know there is something special about Jesus. The Magi show us very early in Jesus' life that Jesus' ministry, death, and resurrection are not only for his fellow Jewish people, but for all people, regardless of culture and nationality. The wise men remind us to reach out to those who might be considered outsiders in our congregation and communities. God calls us to invite and welcome these people. It's so interesting that she writes about the intricacies of the understanding of the Magi. She goes on to say about the Magi that they weren't exactly kings. The Greek word for Magi, magos, can mean wise men, astrologers, priests, but also magician or sorcerers as well. The Magi, they're a bit odd. At first glance, they seem like pagan performers outside of the people of God. And I wonder, how welcome would we be to these odd people if they were to walk in our door right now? What was it like when they showed up bringing gifts to Jesus? Were Joseph and Mary shocked? Was this outside their cultural understanding of their own Jewish faith and the message that God had given them? What was it like for them to see these three men, possibly astrologers, people doing some sort of magic, approach them and give them gifts for their child, the Messiah, the one who would come to save the world? I invite us all to think of a time when someone unexpected gave us a gift. Can we think of a time like that? For me, during this season, I'm reminded of my time that I visited the Holy Land. This stole was actually given to me by my closest friends in seminary when I was fully ordained as a pastor into the Methodist Church. And it was made in Palestine by women who were sewing different items to make money for themselves, to make sure that they could put food on the table and have a job and be able to support their families. When I think about my time in the Holy Land, I think about the time that we traveled in Israel, the beautiful tropical weather, the palm trees, the poinsettia plants that were as tall as the ceiling, that would grow year-round and bloom these gorgeous red blooms. I'd never seen such a thing. You know, I thought they were just tiny. And this is what a poinsettia is. It's like what they do. They're little. So to see these huge bushes and to drive through the countryside and see bananas hanging from trees and oranges and lemons and be by the sea, visit the sacred places. Where the Sermon on the Mount was given, where the Annunciation happened and it was announced that Jesus would be born. And then we moved on into Bethlehem, into the Palestinian area, which is the home to Christians and Muslims. To see Bethlehem and be there for their Christmas and then their Epiphany, which is later than ours on the different calendar. To see everyone robed in all their glory, chanting, and throngs of people filling the square to come in and celebrate Jesus' birth and celebrate the Magi coming, bringing their gifts. This was a whole different experience for me. All I would say I met were curious people at that point in time, being in a foreign land, being in a different situation, different languages being spoken, different religious traditions, different than mine, that I was so comfortable with, that I'd grown up with. All seemed to me a curious people. And yet, the experience that I had was truly magical, was truly mystical. It was truly divine. being in the holy places of Islam, being at the Wailing Wall to engage with Judaism. My faith grew and expanded because of those different experiences and the different people that I engaged with. We never know what kind of experience or how God will speak to us. The story of the Messiah, of the coming Jesus, of the light of Christ that we wait so passionately for, so diligently for. We don't know where each message will come from. And quite often it will come from the people that we least expected. Those that are Wiccan, those that are atheists, those that are agnostic, those that are Muslim, those that are Jewish. Sikhs. Are we open? All we know is that Joseph and Mary, we have to assume, were open. It's never heard that they refused the gifts from the Magi. To be open to accept the gifts and have that become part of the divine story is a message to us, to be open to a curious people that might have a word for us that's unexpected and glorious and life-giving and magical. I invite each one of us to invite people to come worship with us on Christmas Eve. It's a Sunday. We'll have worship at 9:00 a.m. as a Christmas Eve service. And then we'll also have our Christmas Eve service at 3:30 p.m. Do we have the baskets of the candy canes? So Marianne's going to start one over here, and Cindy's going to start one over here by Robin. Last year, we took the little seed Christmas trees that had our name and worship. Everybody take 2. I encourage you to take at least 2. These have the time of our Christmas Eve worship service on it. And I invite you to give these to the most curious people that you encounter. And I don't know what that means to you. It could be at the Ziggy's drive-thru. Someone hands you a coffee and you hand them a candy cane. It could be in the Safeway. It could be somebody walking down the street. Maybe you have a flat tire and someone stops to help you with your flat tire and you give them a candy cane. Everybody likes a little something sweet around the Christmas time. And it has our address, the name of our church, and the times of the Christmas Eve service. And when you meet a curious people, give them one of these and say, hey, Merry Christmas. You can say more about what the tag says if you want to, and the majority of the people that you hand them to will be able to read. So don't make it harder than it needs to be. Just give them the candy cane. Okay? So when we hear of what we commit ourselves to as United Methodists, it's our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. This is what it means to witness to someone else. It's to speak about our church, to offer an option to come be with us in this community, to hear the Christmas story. You never know who will decide to come back to church around Christmas time and end up finding this is a place where they feel comfortable and at home. And a little insight. We'd like to think that we're not a curious people. However, to someone else, we're a curious people. And let's be proud of that. People don't know what Jesus' message is about. They might hear something on the news, or this church did this, or you never know. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. We each have our own personal message of friendliness and care and love to share. So go out there, meet some curious people, be a curious person. And let's know in those times when we're meeting people different than us, there is a message for us to hear and understand with every person that we meet. May it be so. Amen.